Many years ago, I read a book called Everything Bad is Good for You by Stephen Johnson. It was about media, especially a strong focus on video games and how, a lot of people think of video games as these horrible things for kids. It's wasting their time, it's rotting their minds. His argument was totally opposite, that a lot of new media are in fact opening us up to new abilities, enhancing our intelligence in ways that we don't fully even understand yet. And he was basically, it was an apologetic. It was defending video games. That's the point I'm trying to say. It was a good book. I liked it. It had a very, I love media theory, and it was a good take on things. I know I could read totally opposite books like Gerrymander's Four Arguments for the Elimination of Television, which I also love. I don't watch much TV, or at least I think I don't. I don't play video games hardly at all, and but I appreciate the new media, and I like to explore it sometimes and play with it. So I love hearing about it and getting new perspectives on it. I've read his other books, Stephen Johnson's other books, since then, and about 2 years ago, I think he had this miniseries called How We Got to Now that was based on his book before this one. It kind of highlighted 6 inventions or technologies, and it was a great miniseries. It's one of my favorite documentaries, and I highly recommend it. I've actually been rewatching it. I'm in Arizona at my parents' house for the holidays, and I've been rewatching some of it with them. But I wanted to check out his new book, which just came out too. It's called Wonderland: How Play Made the Modern World, and it was a delight. I think I read it in like 3 days, and it's not to say it's a shallow book. It's not. It's just he has a very clear writing style. He packs a lot of ideas in, but he just transitions ideas so smoothly that it's just really a joy to read. So this new book, Wonderland, is about play in the sense that a lot of what we think of as we think of as the things that we have to do as people, as culture, to survive. He actually is talking about things that we don't have to do, these spaces where we can experiment and fool around. And he says that a lot of these things that we don't need to do are actually leading to our greatest advances as a people. Fashion, for example, discovering new dyes, new colors, new weaving processes has led to, new machinery that has really driven our industry. Music, another example that he talks about is he shows these bones that are flutes from like 33,000 years ago that are amazing. I've never seen these. The whole book, by the way, is completely illustrated with color illustrations. It's a beautiful book. It's just a joy to look at. I think illustrations are another example. I recently did my Mark Twain review of The Innocents Abroad, which is an illustrated book. We don't need illustrations in books, but it makes them so fun, so why not? Another example he talks about is spices, which I think people have kind of heard this before, but it's just the way he tells these stories. These are big principles, spices, music, games, things like that. They're big categories, but he just delves into them in a very nuanced way that I enjoy. He highlights all kinds of things that I wasn't aware of. So even the spice chapter, which I was kind of familiar with, he gives a lot of details that I wasn't familiar with. He talks a lot about the development of film, which I hadn't realized how much before, I think of film as something that started in the late 19th century, but he actually goes back quite a ways to these kind of ghost machines that they would just like flash this light with an image, and learning to just move an image around on smoke or on a wall was an amazing development that slowly chipped away towards this thing that we now watch all the time. And he also talks about how the possibility of seeing film is something that we didn't necessarily have to have in the evolution of our optic system, because if we see images in a sequence of above, I think, 12 images per second or more, then it looks like motion. But that is not something that necessarily every eye on the planet, not every animal sees images that way. So we could have very easily been incapable of seeing film, which Can you imagine how different history would have been without all the film that we've been exposed to, all the propaganda, all the movies, everything? It's just changed our culture enormously. It changes how we think about time. If we wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't be able to do these YouTube videos. The development of games is also an interesting subject. Chess, he also talks a lot about Monopoly. I hadn't heard the history of this. It's a great chapter. I recommend it. And also the history of video games, early video games. I didn't realize, I think 1957 is what he says. I could be wrong. I don't have the book with me here, alas. But I think Space War or something was the very first video game. And it's so simplistic, but that first experience of it, people realized right away this was really exciting. And, you know, as soon as something excites people, that's what the point of this book is. It leads to all these developments. And I think video games have led to some amazing developments in our the way that we learn, the way that we experience the world and navigate it and communicate with each other. And it all began from the joy of blasting asteroids or whatever. And he also talks a lot about public spaces. We don't need these things like parks and bars and coffee houses. Those aren't essential for our survival. We just need, you know, food and water or whatever. But by having these places, you know, the development of coffee houses were really a fermenting social atmosphere for ideas of revolution, new political theories. And even to this day, we still have coffee houses and cafes to meet and discuss ideas. It's an informal way of relaxing, but still working. And I hesitate to even call it work because I think the best work is play. It shouldn't be work. I think anything that is unenjoyable is something that is slowing our culture down in the long run. So I love to see play. I think it is essential to our modern world and helping us to connect as a world society. So I like this book a lot. I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorites of 2016, and you should read it too.